back. I'm Darren,
And I'm Becca.
and this is the Love Don't Lie podcast where we talk about real life stuff, relationships, doing some bit of a self evaluation on camera, accountability.
Yes.
That's what this is all about. So, I was thinking, I was like, yeah, we we don't seem very high energy sometimes. Or this is our third podcast, by the way. So, I'm like, man, we could be a little more high, but you know what? I think the energy we have is good because we are.
Having a couch conversation.
Yeah, man, it's the couch. We're
Can't
chill.
be jumping on it like we're kids.
No, bruh. I I wish somebody would. Um, so we just want to have a podcast that, yes, it's easy to listen to, and no, you're not going to hear us whining and complaining. But what you will hear is you're not by yourself.
Yes.
You're not the only ones going through it. Whether you are a parent, not a parent, if you're in a marriage, you're not married, but you're in a serious relationship, you know, relationship with people that you give leeway to give input into your life, whether that's a best friend or a mentor. All those different roles play a major factor in how accountable are we, because ultimately we're accountable to God. Because if we're accountable to God, first of all, we're going to treat each other better.
Right.
We're going to look at things differently.
Yeah.
We're going to wonder, hey, did I handle this the way that God would want me to handle this?
Right.
Was I listening to Holy Spirit when he was like, probably shouldn't say that this way? And that's kind of the stuff we're going to get into today. So I had actually had a different topic on my mind, but you had brought this topic up and actually made a video on it announcing what we were going to talk about. And I think
I switched it up.
you switched it. You pulled an audible on me, and I'm okay with it. I'm glad we did, because I think it's something that we can really kind of drill into, because it's very apropos to our life,
Oh, what is that?
appropriate to
Oh,
talk about.
oh, the fancy.
We have a
Sorry.
it's appropriate for us to be able to bring this out because it's something we dealt with and something that we continue to deal with.
True.
So why don't you go ahead and get us started on your thoughts about, let's start. What do you think about starting with us?
Well, yeah, that's the best place to start because that's who you can relate to is yourself. So we're talking about um, dealing with realizing when you're wrong and like being able to admit it.
Right.
I think a lot of people struggle with admitting that they're wrong because of pride. I think it boils down to pride because people nowadays in this culture, in this world, they're kind of encouraged to have pride in things. They're encouraged to be proud about who they are, proud about
Right.
where they're from, proud about how many kids they have, whatever it is, proud about everything. But the Bible tells us not to be proud. It tells us that God will exalt the humble person, right? And humility means that you're able to say, "Yo, I was wrong. I messed up. I did wrong." And I think it's sometimes hard for me to admit I'm wrong because it's just that shame of I shouldn't have even done this in the first place.
Right.
And now I have to come back and say that not only did I do that, but realizing I was wrong, and just the whole shame that comes with being wrong, instead of just holding on to those feelings of I'm going to try and prove that I'm right so that I don't have to change, so I don't have to be ashamed of how I was acting. So, yeah, that's how I feel about why it's a struggle for me. But what about you? Why is it a struggle for you to sometimes admit that you're wrong? I mean, when you realize you're wrong, you're usually good about admitting it,
Well, thank you.
but I think sometimes it's mentally more of a struggle than you let people know. And so I'm wondering, like, what makes it a struggle for you?
Um, what makes it a struggle for me
Yeah.
to admit that I'm wrong?
I mean, maybe it is just pride, like I was saying. But is there anything else that you're like, I have a hard time saying I
It
was wrong?
it used to be
What?
because I was a very prideful person. Like
So how did you change that? The love of the Lord. So,
I would hope I would hope now at this point in my life that I've gotten to the point where if I'm wrong, I'm able to look at something objectively and just realize, oh, bro, you was wrong. And I think that I have gotten pretty good at owning my mistakes and my wrongness because I have been wrong so much
uh,
about so many things. Um, a lot of those things I internalized
mm,
because if I was wrong, I didn't want it to really be out there, right?
right, right. Like I
So,
said, the shame factor of
excuse
people
me.
being like, "Yo, dude's been wrong
But
this whole
while you
time.
were
He finally just
talking,
realized."
I was looking at this Bible verse, and this is an interesting translation here. It's Proverbs 28:13. This is a person who refuses to admit his mistakes can never be successful. But if
That's
that
good.
person confesses and forsakes those mistakes,
Excuse me.
another chance is given. In other words, he gets a fresh start. That is Proverbs 28:13. Now, it's the TLB version. The
Tree of
T
life.
No, no, TLB is in boy. It might be the Living Bible.
Oh,
The Tree of Life version is pretty close to the King James and it's pretty close to the NLT.
that's a
But
good point. If you can't admit that you're wrong, you know,
I
how
just
can
really
you
liked the way
succeed?
that showed up. But it said, "Blessed is the one who is always cautious, but whoever hardens his heart will fall into trouble. Like a roaring lion or a prowling bear is a wicked ruler over helpless people." I'm sorry, that 15 doesn't apply here.
Just
So
14.
yeah,
Okay.
so 13, 12, and 13, or 13 and 14. The one who covers up his transgressions will not prosper, but whoever confesses and forsakes them finds mercy. That's where I was getting at. Sorry. Blessed is the one who is always
Yes.
cautious, but whoever hardens his heart will fall into trouble. I had enough trouble. Um, I would like to think that I have gotten a lot better at admitting when I'm wrong, and I appreciate the kind words that you said a second ago because I realized the mess of my life that I had made with everything that I know and everything that I've experienced. I was unable to apply those things in such a manner that it would have caused me to be in a position where I was well to do. And I was not good at relationships. Um, I, I would like to think that I'm getting better at them, but even now, I realize I'm not close to where I want to be. I want to be like Jesus. So, you know, uh,
Yeah.
still got
Big boots to
still
fill.
got a good ways to go.
Same here.
Um, to answer your question, I don't know what made me.
You said you were sick of trouble. I think that's a good
I mean,
answer.
I can't put my finger on a specific incident.
No, that's fine.
You know
When you were reading verse 13, it says, when you confess, you forsake.
that one.
You closed it. You confess your transgressions and forsake them, you find mercy.
Yeah.
Like that, I think, is something that I've struggled with, is believing that I'll actually find mercy.
Yeah.
When you admit that you're wrong, um, just that fear of, if I say I was wrong, then maybe this person will no longer like me because it took however long to admit that I was wrong.
Sure.
But most people are more merciful to you when you just say, I was wrong. Please forgive me. At least good friends will. If they're not a good friend, I guess you're gonna find out by
Yeah, I just really like the
admitting when
way
you're wrong.
I've never heard this translation here, but
Yeah.
I really like the way that says a person who refuses to admit his mistakes can never be successful, and if that person confesses and forsakes those mistakes, another chance is given. I think that that just is so strong. Like that's such amazing relationship language.
It is.
Um,
Because that's what Jesus did.
yeah,
He gave us another chance. Because and the key is not just to admit that you're wrong, but to forsake
your
those,
wrongness.
yeah, forsake those things. Not just say, "Hey, I did this wrong," but then the next day be like doing it again.
Right.
So I think that's sometimes where I struggle is going back to I've done it because if you don't learn another way to do it, but
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still times where I get upset. Like I'll get lit for a minute, but
right, but you catch yourself much faster,
yes,
much more quickly.
I
You're
put
like, oh,
I put the
okay,
fuse
okay,
out.
right,
I don't let it get to the.
right. Speaking of that, though, that leads me on to the idea that we were talking about, like how I used to just hold on to things, and I said this in a different podcast about how I used to like just hold on to my wrong feelings even after realizing I was wrong because I didn't want to have to admit I was wrong. And so I would like hold on to it, maybe to prove something, to see if like, oh yeah, it's worth being angry about still. Or oh yeah, yeah,
It's so
like
petty.
yeah, for real, like being petty about stupid things. And sorry, the word stupid's not very nice. We always tell our kids not to say it, but
I mean, this
I'm
is
sure there's no kids watching this.
they're gonna have some strong relationship skills.
Right.
We're
Um,
gonna have them as a guest.
but like I was talking about the other day, or it was several weeks ago, okay? But that's recent enough, right? We were trying to clean up the house. What I don't know what for, just in general. The house gets messy, and we are like, let's get this house clean. And he went somewhere to do something, and I felt all alone. Felt like this is on me. I've got all this stuff to do by myself. And then his mom
Oh
comes
my
over
yes.
to help, and she brings the girls with her because they had been with her, and I like immediately got upset, feeling like I was like upset that she was helping. I don't know why. And then when he finally came home, I just had this attitude like, oh, sure, we're all gonna be here cleaning, and you just gonna come in here after it's halfway done, whatever. And I kept having this attitude, even though like the Holy Spirit convicted me. He's like, really, girl, you gonna act like that? Like you are wrong for your attitude right now. And I was like, too bad. Like I'm gonna too bad. And Darren's like, what are you so upset about? I don't understand. What? What? I don't even know. I don't know what I said because
Wasn't I going to get some stuff to cook for an engagement we had? Like it was something we had committed to, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna do the cooking, and I'll go get the.
I don't remember. Honestly, I truly don't remember the situation of what he was doing, or why we were cleaning,
But I
or
do
why I was
remember.
even upset. But it was
I remember that
not
if
a
I
good
would
idea.
not have went and done what I was gonna do, something important wouldn't have gotten done.
Right. So then I was getting upset about something that he was doing that needed to get done. And instead of being grateful that his mother was helping, I was upset that she probably wasn't gonna do it the right way. I was like, oh my God. And I had to come
I think
to,
you were upset because it wasn't me that was doing it, is what you
well,
told me.
no, it wasn't even
Because
that.
you were like, that should
It
have been
was,
you helping.
no, no. I think it was the fact that I felt alone and I had taken on this attitude of, fine then, I'm gonna do everything myself.
Bro, when I say she was cleaning aggressively,
I was so
there were some
angry.
spots in the house that I had never seen as clean as they were. And I thought for a minute,
Oh, because I don't know who was coming over. Somebody was coming over. And I felt like you just wanted to impress them. So I was like, fine, I'm gonna scrub the walls. I'm gonna clean the baseboards. I'm gonna like you're like, we have to clean those up. And I'm like, fine, I'm gonna
she was
clean the
going,
dust off the baseboards and clean the splashes of dirt off the wall and all this
she
stuff.
was going in. I was like, what?
Like, and God was like, yo, you can just clean without being angry. And I'm like, no, no, because if I'm not angry, then I'm not gonna be efficient if you're done. I know that's like
Like we
over
look
the
back,
top, but like
we've been able to laugh about it several times since, but at the time it was hard for me to not just get angry with you.
yeah, and I saw that happen,
And she
and
was
that's
get
what convicted me. That's truly what convicted me is the fact that you were like, "What the heck?" But then I saw you be like, whatever. Like I'm not even gonna deal with it
I said
right now.
whatever.
You didn't say whatever, but you put off the like. the I'm not I'm not trying to deal with that right now because whatever we're doing is more important than dealing with your attitude right now. That's what you were communicating. So you let it go. Like we'll talk about it, but we're not dealing with it right now. I think that made me more angry
It did.
because when I'm angry, it's really
Hold on, let's
centered around me, and I'm like you don't even care to deal with my anger right now. How dare you?
like it's so funny because ladies especially do this. This is like a known thing that the ladies will do is that they will want you to attend to their upsetness and their anger, but they want you to pursue them while they're angry so they can project it on you at the same time you're trying to
Appease.
appease it. And
It's
then
true. It's true. I hate it.
and if
I
you
do
try
it
to start
all the time.
appeasing it, then it makes them madder because then you're placating into it kind of adds fuel to the fire rather because they don't want to be appeased at the same time they're wanting to be appeased. Like because if you appease them, then they don't have a reason to hold on to whatever's driving them at the moment.
That's it. Like when we have to realize that that was stupid for me to act that way, it just like
Oh,
makes the whole situation of you acting angry just like pointless. And so I'm trying to find a point to stay angry. Hello. So that's why I stay angry sometimes.
well, I used to not be that guy.
No, he used to get angry that I was angry for no reason.
Well, I would try to be sweet and fix it, and then when you wouldn't accept it, then I would go off. And then you'd be like, "See, I told you."
Yeah, that's where arguments go. When you can just, my mom always said, an argument needs two people.
That's right.
And if you just,
It takes two to tango.
that's right. So if you just back up like you did, you're like, I'm not trying to deal with this at the moment. You can have conversations about whatever's bothering the person, but not when they're in an attitude or anger or whatever intense emotion is there. It needs to settle down before the conversation happens. And that's what you did. You backed off and was like, no.
I agree because I used to be bad about trying to convince you why you shouldn't feel a certain way,
Right.
and that was like across the board in a lot of different types of situations because I didn't realize that I was being toxic, and I didn't realize that I was being provoking, or even not even sorry.
I was
I
waiting for the.
I didn't realize that I was not acknowledging the fact that okay, this is how you feel, and I'm the reason you feel that way.
Right.
Whether you're right or wrong for feeling that way is not the question.
Right.
And
Sometimes just
so
admitting that you're the reason somebody feels certain, like that's it. Plain and simple.
now
I made this person feel this way.
where I was bad about, and some people be like, "Oh, you just that's narcissistic behavior." I legit, I think when I look back and I'm like, no, there was a lot of times where I just like legit could not wrap my head around why you were being the way you were being.
And see, I think it's a male thing to solve the problem. When you see that I feel a certain way, you don't want me to feel that way, you
Right.
want to fix it. And what we've learned is that you don't always have to fix it. Sometimes you just have to say, I understand you feel that way.
Yeah. I'm gonna no. I can't even say I understand that you feel that way. Oftentimes, with what I have learned and what I did learn, because I I never wanted to be disingenuous or throw a sweet lie out there. Well, I understand why you feel that way,
Not why.
or I understand that you feel that. Like I couldn't understand it, but I'd be like, hey, look, if I did something, knowing good and well it was me that did it.
Right.
Like I'm not, and oftentimes I never knew how to really apologize and let that apology just stand on its own.
Right. Yeah. To be able to say, hear somebody say, you hurt me, and you just say, I'm so sorry. And that's it. Not make excuses, not defend yourself.
I was horrible at that.
It's hard though.
I was so bad about it that it like became a point of contention in our marriage that you didn't even want to tell me how you were feeling or anything
That's true. I
because
kind of just held
like
back, like,
you would say things like, I don't know, you're just gonna think it's stupid anyway. Or and I'm like, no, I'm not. but not realizing that when you would say, no, I feel this way. And no, to me, I felt like you're being very vague and very ambiguous in describing your emotions and describing your feelings, right? And excuse me, I have to re-situate here.
Well, let me just say, women in general have to talk. Most women, I should say. I don't know all women, but most women have to process their thoughts by talking through all the
Right, but you weren't
strings of
talking to
connections.
me about it. You were talking to you, excuse me, to yourself or your mom. Who else? Not your sisters, but or or a
Well,
friend.
because I didn't feel like I could talk to you through the whole string of
Well,
emotions
you
without getting
couldn't.
interrupted, and without you trying to fix a problem before I even got to the end of figuring out, oh, okay, so this is the problem. Let's fix this.
And you're right, you couldn't because there was a part of me that just subconsciously like felt the need to. Oftentimes, I felt like I already knew what you're gonna say, and I didn't want to prolong dealing with it, and so I would just project to you
That shouldn't feel that
that you shouldn't feel that way because of this, and this.
way.
And in reality, it didn't matter. It didn't matter why you felt that way, except for the fact that I did or said something that made you feel hurt or upset or disgruntled or not the best.
Yeah. Right.
No matter how minor or major it could have been, my response was always just this, well, I don't understand that. Or if you can't explain it to me, then it must not be a real thing.
So did you feel like you had a hard time admitting that you were the problem?
Oftentimes, yes, because I didn't really feel like I was the problem. Whether I was right or wrong, there was a problem, and I was the source of it. Because
Not to say I was 100% innocent, obviously, but
no, 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 I'm saying I had a hard because I couldn't wrap my head around that. Like it took us sitting down with somebody, being like, "Bro, this is not rocket science. it's it's literally not algebra. It's 1 plus 1. A plus B equals C.
yeah.
If you wouldn't have done this, or if you wouldn't have said this, she wouldn't have felt this. It's it's
So,
now whether I was right or whether I was wrong, however she chooses to feel about it, that's not the issue. And that was the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around. And not just you, other people. Because I realize there are a lot of people in my life that eventually a lot of people in my life were the same way that I was.
so they would validate how you were.
They would validate how I was
Yeah.
because we would do it to each other. So I thought that was like a normal process, right?
Right. It makes sense. If you surround your people with people that are like you, you're not gonna change because
Well,
they're gonna keep on telling you you're right.
birds of a feather, man.
Right. And that's why I'm thankful for the community that we have around us right now,
Yeah.
because it definitely challenges the way we think. It helps us to see where we're wrong and to make those changes. And like you said about accountability, they hold us accountable for, you know, sticking to what we say. So,
Right. Right.
um,
I was bad about it. I was toxic. And that's a word that I used to hate because it's so thrown. It was thrown around so much. It still gets thrown around so much in certain circles and conversations because it's really a blame word or a virtue signaling word that people, or maybe it's a word that people project often so that they can virtue signal, right? So my point is this: oh, you're being toxic because you're chauvinistic, right? But but for them to project that, it doesn't overshadow it outshines or it it hides the fact that their toxicity
right.
is is like slick. It's not overt, right?
Right.
It's very slick and poignant and strategically placed, right? And what I've learned is that toxicity is toxicity, whether it's inadvertent, whether it's major or minor.
Right.
A little bit of mercury in your diet over time will kill you. A little
Yes.
bit of rat poison in your food consistently over time will kill you.
Right.
And so I am so fortunate that I've had people be like, because I've had people be like, hey man, what you're doing really is the very definition of being a toxic spouse.
No, I never said that to you, but I'm
No,
glad.
you never
No,
said that.
but I'm glad that there's people in your life who would say that. Because if I said to you, you're toxic in this relationship,
That's wounding.
right? There's
That's
but
offensive. Like that's highly offensive.
and you wouldn't have heard it. You would have been like, whatever.
I would have been like, no, no, you're just a passive aggressive whiny baby.
Right. You would have said that.
And like our men's group, there's a lot of things we talk about, like thankfully learning how to differentiate from learning how to differentiate from what should be said and what needs to be said.
Yes, that's hard because like you want to tell the truth, but you can't just tell the truth in in whatever words first come to your mind. At least not for me until you train your mind the right way. But like you have to think through how can I say this without hurting them. Like I said, if I said you're toxic, that would have been hurtful. But if I say hey, this I don't know, reworded it, it's gonna come across better. So, anyways, um, what do you think is the best way to handle? Maybe you said it, but to handle if the other person's wrong, 100%, and they keep trying to prove that they're right.
Well, hold on.
Like,
Let's revert back real quick before we jump there because we didn't really address the first question. Give a definite answer. The first answer is you got to swallow your pride.
oh right,
The first answer is you have to be honest enough with yourself to not want to live in a lie and understand that that is whether you say it or not say it,
Mm.
it's going to keep going and affecting the relationship negatively until it's dealt with. And too often of times people don't deal with they don't try to deal with it until it's too late. Because that person either leaves or something tragic happens and they're like, oh my God, I need them back, or oh my God. And then they're stuck in a system, the cesspool of toxicity. And then or if it's a lie that you choose to live in, then you keep justifying that lie until it eventually just becomes this engulfing thing that the only way to kill it is to have a literal come to Jesus moment with you and the other person. Uh and and then you got to admit it anyway, and now you're embarrassed. Now there's uber hurt feelings. There's other people involved. There's kids involved. There's business partners involved. You know what I mean? Like
all because you couldn't admit you're wrong.
all because you can't admit. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to stop and say, "I'm probably wrong. Let me think about this." If it's really that hard for you to say it in the moment, and you feel like you really got to save face, I've learned that saving face is not as important as saving like me saving face is not as important as preserving the relationship and allowing somebody else to save face.
Right, right,
And so if I can kill it by admitting I'm wrong right there, that is a place where I believe you have to come to in your maturity as a Christian, as a person, as a human, that if you're going to walk in humility, sometimes you just got to eat the L. You just got to take the L and be like, "Hey, my bad. I for real thought I was right. I was fervently sure that I was right, but I realized that I'm not. I'm sorry that it even took me a day to sleep on it, to think about it, or I'm sorry things got so heated we couldn't just talk right then. You were right. I was wrong. How can I fix this going forward?"
Right. And
That's how you deal with that.
there's been times that you've been wrong and I've known it, but I just don't say anything because I don't want to embarrass you. And then later you come and say, "Hey, I realize I probably did this wrong, made the wrong choice here." And it's literally for me, like I'm never like, "Oh my gosh, how could he be wrong?" Like, I'm whatever. Like I'm not rude about it. It literally is like a burden relieved to know that I saw where you were wrong, but didn't want to say anything about it. Mostly because I'm trying to just trust you in your choices and trust that God's gonna work it out, whether it was right or wrong. And sometimes choices you make are like you're just trying to make something happen for your business or whatever.
Right.
And then I'm like, I don't know about that, but then when you admit like, hey, this is what happened, it's literally like a burden relieved. Like, oh, okay, I don't have to feel like I have to hide what I know or hide how I feel because he just admitted the wrong that he created, whatever. Not not to make you feel bad in the moment, but admitting that you were wrong in general, like it relieves this burden of people trying not to say anything about it.
You don't have to walk on eggshells.
Right.
But I invite you, even as much as I appreciate you trying to allow me to save face, and I'm going to say it on here. That's something that, if it's me and you, it's not going to be embarrassing. And there are things that couples should not say to each other in public.
That's true.
At home, like I'm not going to put you out in front of people. Be like, well, why'd you do this? That makes no sense. Well, yeah, that is embarrassing.
And I used to not even care. Like I didn't even think about if what I
Yeah,
said
we've had
was
some fights over
embarrassing.
that.
Right. Like I didn't ever mean to embarrass him, but I felt like this shouldn't be embarrassing. I can just say whatever, whatever. And then he's like, why would you say that? You can't say these kind of things in front of everybody. And I realize it's a matter of honor.
It's not that you can't say these things in front of people. It's you can't say these kind of things in front of people and expect people to think that you respect me, or vice versa.
Right.
I can't call you out on certain things in front of people. I mean, that's just biblical honoring each other 101. If you have an issue, you pull the person aside first and talk about it.
Right. And most people aren't going to think bad about the other person. They're going to think bad about you if you're talking bad about somebody. Because if you talk bad about your own spouse, how much more would you talk bad about another person?
Yeah, I agree. I thank God that we are not. Now, let me just put a caveat here because that was never a huge deal. Like, it only happened a few times where I had to be like, hey, look, this is an issue. And if you don't stop it, we're going to have problems. And thankfully, your heart changed and it was something that we were able to work out.
I think the main problem was me correcting you in front of people. And I had to realize that even though maybe what you said was not 100% correct, is it really a big deal to correct this issue? Like you say the wrong day of the week or something.
Right.
Like, oh, on Friday, and I'm like, on Saturday, actually. Does it matter? Just let the conversation happen. And I realized that just don't correct you in front of people
Well,
unless it's like
I was
detrimental.
I was bad about that too, because it's these little facts. We were bad about it to each other, but sometimes, and it's one thing to be able to do it lovingly and informatively, like in conversation,
Right, not interrupting.
right? And I'll admit, I was not the smoothest with that, you know, um, because sadly there are times where you were like, you kind of embarrassed me tonight, and I was like, well, why were you embarrassed? Again, I should have just been like, babe, I'm so sorry, and it there's no excuse.
Right.
because I didn't. Again, we as a couple and as people did not know how to properly validate other people's feelings. You were raised passive aggressively.
Right.
I was raised aggressively.
There was no in between.
Right. You know what I mean? Like and that's, it's just the way it was, you know? And I'm thankful that we've, again, big shout out to Pastor Apostle Man of God Ryan Perkins and Lady Taylor Perkins. Miss Taylor Perkins is one of the most gracious people
She is.
and loving people that you could ever want to meet. And I'm thankful that we have them in our life because, you know, even at 40, 39, 40, 41, even at 39 years old, not realizing how unaware, unself-aware that I was. It's just a weird thing. And I'm so glad that we got people that just be like, hey, did you think about it like this? Or have you thought about the ramifications of not your what you're saying, but the tonality or the the moment in which you're saying it?
Right.
And so, yeah, which I see the fruit in our relationship. But I think one thing that we have to realize as people, as leaders, as Christians, is that we can become desensitized to the emotions and spiritual well-being of people around us because we take for granted the fact that we think we know them and know where they are. And unless you sat down with somebody and really taken the time to figure out where you at lately, how are things for real?
Right.
And you would be surprised how many divorces and how many breakups and how many friendships would be saved just over that because folks don't want to communicate honestly.
Right. Like sometimes I'd avoid certain conversations because like he was saying, he used to um just tell me how I should feel instead of just saying, okay, that's how you do feel. And I came to that point, like we said already, that I just would avoid even talking about my feelings. I wouldn't want to talk about where I was at mentally, spiritually, whatever, because that would mean he'd probably tell me that I shouldn't feel that way. And so if you can start having conversations with whoever you want to keep having a relationship with,
Right.
um, about where you're at and really listen to them. Be the person who listens, even if the other person doesn't, and then just be honest about your feelings. And if they don't listen, well, then, you can talk through that issue. But to just be upfront and honest and have conversations about where you're at with that particular relationship, how you feel about what they do, what they don't do, that can break some ground right there. Just that little bit of a conversation, and it can lead to bigger things. But being able to value the relationship more than you value being right,
It shows empathy.
it'll get you so far.
It shows empathy. What I'm learning is that it shows empathy without all the extra. It shows the effort of being empathetic without having to seem like I don't really know how to be empathetic, so I'm going to say all this other stuff.
Sometimes, let me just say this.
Go
I
ahead.
feel like I've really learned. Oh, I shouldn't say really learned. I really am starting to see the importance of talking less and listening more. And the Bible says that in James chapter 1 verse 19, it says to be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. And then it points out that human anger does not produce the righteousness of God. So I'm learning with my kids, our kids, to just listen and not tell them stop crying. There's nothing to be upset about right now. Like, to them, there's something they're upset about.
Yeah.
And so just listen to their feelings, ask them questions, be empathetic in the moment, and really being like that helps me slow down my day and not feel like I'm in a rush, I'm in a rush, I'm in a rush, let's get going. Like, why are they struggling right now? maybe it has nothing to do with what the child's hair looks like. Maybe it's really she just wants some encouragement. And to hear through the screams of, I hate how my hair looks, and to hear, I just want you to encourage me. Like, being able to see my kids from that perspective is helping, currently in process, is helping me to even just deal with people in general better.
Right.
Because people in general, truly, a lot of people have a mindset that's still childish. And if you can deal with their mindsets in a way that you would deal with a child, it's actually a lot easier.
Well, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a little side note. I was just
I
thinking
mean, hey,
about being empathetic.
it's a great point though. That's a fantastic point because everybody at some point, I mean, empathy gets you much further.
With everyone. I was using kids as an example because that's where I'm at with learning empathy.
For sure.
Um,
So what do you think about this? So to your second point that we gonna get on real quick here. What about when you are right and the other person is wrong? Do we give them the right to be wrong?
I think that's very important thing is to allow the person to continue being wrong for some time. Because if they've been wrong this long already, is it really an emergency to prove that they're wrong right now? That's what I've had to learn. Like, if they've been wrong this long,
It's not life threatening.
unless they decide that using something that will hurt them won't hurt them and they're going to use it, like taking too much certain medicine or whatever. I don't know, it's a random example. I couldn't think of anything. And they're like, whatever, like, my arm is broken and I'm hurting, you're going to try and convince them they're wrong right then and there. But if it's a mindset that takes time to shift, then you can give them some more time to shift it. And for us, believing in Jesus, we give it to Jesus. We say, okay, God, like, I see this person is wrong. For me, that's what I do. I say, God, show them that they're wrong or show me that I'm wrong, please. Because there's nothing that I can say when a person thinks they're right. There's nothing I can say to convince them that they are not right. I mean, pretty much.
We've been there.
If a person's wrong,
Because you wasn't
they're
finna tell me, you wasn't finna tell me nothing if I thought I was right.
right, and me too. Me too. When I knew I was wrong, if I was determined to be that way, I was gonna be that way.
Right.
And there's nothing anybody can say about it. So I definitely believe that it's important to let that person be wrong, but then come to a place of they're in the right mood, the right time of day, whatever, to sit down and talk about it. And then you let it sit. Like, hey, I believe you're wrong in this area. And they probably will get defensive and not want to admit they're wrong right there, but you just let it sit. What's called planting seeds.
There you go. Because where is a good opportunity to do that? When you start separating their emotion from their right or wrongness.
Right.
Okay, cool. You feel that way. I am so sorry I made you feel that way. Not, yeah, you feel that way, but can you
give me an example?
Give me an example.
You shouldn't need an example to
right.
say sorry.
Because when you're able to separate the emotion from the right or the wrongness, it then becomes very clear that it's only one part of the equation. Like there's only one way to get that wrong, and that is, for instance, if I know you're wrong and I'm gonna be like, hey, that's cool. I'm more concerned with being so loving and being so secure in the fact that I'm going to place this in the hands of God. And because I love you and I value what you bring to my life and and I value what I see that God has placed inside of you more than I value proving to you that I'm right and you're wrong, and that potentially driving a wedge
right
there because now you don't feel safe, or maybe it drives you away for a little bit and you realize that you're wrong and then you have to eat humble pie and come back to me because maybe I have something you need or want, or just because you realize you're wrong and you want to come back and fix the relationship. When in all reality, there should, if I, knowing that I'm right, can mitigate and prevent all that by just saying, hey, cool, if that's the way you see it, I can understand that and move on, then what that does is that lets that person know he values me more than he values being right. Now, some people will come back to you and be like, hey, why did you let me be wrong?
That's true.
Because some people are so used to getting the fifth degree.
Well, what do you do then? What do you do if someone's like, why'd you let me be wrong?
Because it's not my responsibility to prove you wrong.
That's a good way to handle it.
It's not my responsibility. That's between you and Holy Spirit. Now, if you standing there bald faced lying in a situation where it's going to compromise my integrity or somebody else's integrity, or and I'm not talking about character, I'm talking about your integrity in a moment where the Bible does talk about calling things out that aren't true, but I'm talking about amongst friends, amongst people, and even more so going what this is going the extra mile, making sure that even if they're wrong, that you cover them by not exposing them.
Right.
Because exposing them in a mistake or error is not something that Holy Spirit does. Holy Spirit deals with that individually.
He does.
Right? Jesus dealt with those things individually.
Right.
When Peter had pulled Jesus to the side, he was like going off, like, Lord, you can't do. Jesus said, dude, get behind me, Satan. He didn't call Peter the devil. He told Peter, you were being adversarial to the purpose that God had put me forth here, and you know who I am.
Right.
Because flesh and blood didn't reveal to you who I am.
Right. And he didn't go announce it. Jesus didn't go announce it to everybody else. Be like, hey, look what Peter's doing. He
The
word him.
The word
right
says
there.
that they were having a conversation.
Peter and Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like Jesus
So-
didn't go like announce to everybody, here's an example of what not to do.
Jesus did not castigate, and he did not lambast, and he did not expose people who were trying to get it right, but they were wrong.
Right. He exposed people who acted like they were doing it right, but were not.
He
Because they
exposed-
were leading people, like the Pharisees, they were leading people
Yes.
down the wrong path, and so of course he had to make it public
Because
they
they
were leading the public.
they did it in public.
Right.
But if I have a friend, or if I have you, and there's something not quite right there, if I can help you see in a quick moment, hey, look, this is yada 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 yada, or hey, I'd like to revisit this and tell me what you think about it. Because there's always a way to let people know they're wrong without accusing them or telling them they're wrong. And
Especially when you get them to think for themselves about it. Like, hey,
Right.
let's talk about reevaluate. Like you said, what do you think about it?
so yeah, so hey,
Do
I
you
heard
think you made the right choice here?
I heard you say this, this, and this. I've come to realize that, when you look into it, it was really actually kind of like this, this, and this. And I wanted to see what you thought about that. Or hey, what's your opinion on, I know you had said this, but I found this information. Were you aware of this? And what it does is it causes them to, number one, save face. It causes them to have an opportunity to appreciate the fact that there's no finger pointing, there's no, you're not doing anything that would cause them to be looked at in an unfavorable light.
Right. Right.
And you're
not changing their reputation.
right. And so I think the responsibility of giving people the right to be wrong is so much bigger than just saying, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. Because it's not about telling people they're right when they're wrong. It's about allowing people to be wrong so they can come back and find out that they can now make it right.
Right. Right. Not just saying, fine, I give you permission to be wrong.
Because,
But like literally just saying, okay, I understand.
right,
Cool.
because that's just being ugly.
Excuse me.
And
Right. And some people say we agree to disagree,
I don't.
which is kind of the same idea. Like I'm internally gonna agree that disagreeing right now is where it's gonna be, but
You know
you know,
why
you
I
don't
don't
say
you know
that.
why I don't like that anymore?
What?
Because it doesn't leave room for true unity.
Oh, that's a good point.
I used to be that way. Well, I'll agree to disagree with you. I don't want to disagree with you. I want to be in unity with you. And if it takes you a little bit to sit with something, and if you truly want to be in unity with me, and I say, "Hey, let's sit with this a little bit and let's take some time to pray about this." Because I see it this way, you see it that way, and I just want to make sure that if you're right, then hey, please forgive me, I'm wrong. But if if that's not the case, then I don't want us having a break in fellowship or separated in any kind of a separation of any kind in our relationship
Right.
just because we're going to agree to disagree. A disagreement it should be
It keeps you separated.
right. So I look now, I want to look for reasons to be in agreement. For instance, um I had an incident that was brought to my attention by my pastor that I thought was a non-issue because when it happened with somebody that I've been in relationship with for a long time. And what I thought was picking and playing really wounded somebody. And because I was not aware of where that person actually was, I took for granted the fact that that's just so and so. We've known each other forever, and to be honest with you, I haven't sat down and had a real conversation with that person in a long time. And so I had no clue of where she's really at or where that person was really even how they were really doing.
Right.
And like what internal spiritual battles they have been going through. And so when I said what I said to them, the spirit in which I said it in, with it was just taken the wrong way from my perspective. But
Right.
from their perspective, it was taken the only way that it was given. But it was given in that way with a smile, which made it even more grievous.
Mm.
Right?
But you were being sarcastic.
I wasn't being sarcastic.
Oh,
I was being funny. I was being quick and I was being sharp.
oh,
I wasn't
see,
being sarcastic.
that leads to what I was thinking.
Well, I mean,
earlier.
if you want to call it like in my head, it wasn't sarcasm. In my head, it was just flat out blunt humor.
Oh, I see.
Because I wasn't being smart aleck towards her. I wasn't being in my mind. Let me say in my mind. I wasn't being ugly. I was being quick and
Right,
and
sometimes the way we joke or how we joke, we have to remember it's actually could be hurtful because it depends on what the other person is
because we
going through.
we become desensitized to the environment that we are in so often and the things that we should pick up on.
Right.
We take for granted, and that when this was brought to my attention, I thought it was dealt with because pastor was like, "Hey, so and so kind of brought this to my attention. What happened there?" I'm like, "Yada yada yada. I said this, she said that, we said this." It was a laugh, and
Like it seemed like something that got brushed off,
right.
but then it got brought up again, and you're like, I thought that was
And then
over.
the person calls me and is like, "Hey, look, I just had a bad attitude," and I said, "I'm sorry that I made you even feel that way. I'm sorry that hey, look, I apologize that I said anything that made you feel some type of way about it. It wasn't my intention, and I probably shouldn't have said it at all." Now, I thought that was it. But what I didn't know is that had still been eating at this person. And it was brought to my attention again from actually from my pastor.
Yeah.
Because he had met with this person not about that specific issue, but it had come up because that person was like, "Look, I'm having a hard time getting over this." And pastor brought it to my attention. He's like, "You remember that little incident?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, it's really being a stumbling block to this other person." And I said, "Wow." Because in my mind, I was baffled. I thought, now, is this person just looking for a reason to be offended? Or is this person going overboard? And and before I could even say it, he goes, it's just like we talked about back, it doesn't matter. Because if you I call my I consider myself being discipled and being led under this ministry and attached to this ministry. He says, is this the way that Jesus would handle it? And is it the way that the leader of this house would handle it? Because if you're representing Jesus and you are representing our church and you're representing the ministry that is governed through here and through your life, is that how I would have handled it? That's no different than the CEO of a large corporation talking to one of his executives saying, "Hey, look, you're doing this, and this out in the open, and then in here in the boardroom, you're doing this, and this. All of this gets reflected back up top to the brand and to me as the
Right.
as the executive,
Oh,
right?"
yeah.
And so, and I'm not trying to make our church and Jesus seem like a brand, but I'm using the analogy that, as someone who's in leadership, I thought it was done with. We apologized. But what I ended up doing, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back or nothing like that, I wanted to put an end to this because I knew what was about to happen. I actually didn't know what was about to happen until Pastor said, because this person said to me how much they love you, but it hurt them to the point where they thought about not even coming back to church because they just didn't want to deal with it.
Right.
Now,
And you didn't think it was even that big of a deal in
didn't
the
think
first place.
didn't think it was that big of a deal.
When it was brought to your attention that it was a big deal to that person.
I got on the phone and I said, "Hey, I need you to get over here, or I need to come to you." Or I asked, "Are you working? Because I need to see you. It's very important." That person said, "Well, I can come over there, or you can come here." I said, "You know what? Let's have dinner. You want to come over and
And
have?"
he makes the best fish tacos, so we had fish tacos.
I just wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to provide a space where a safe conversation. And as soon as that person walked in the door, she was greeted by my little girls who were trying to show them everything about their play area and all that. And I had to make sure that before she got preoccupied, I said, "Hey, look," and this. I'm bringing this all home right here. I am sorry. And here's what happens often. When you say, "I'm sorry," the other person says, "Well, that's okay."
Right.
And I had to say, "No, it's not."
Right.
And you, as a person who is going to apologize because you realize that you've got to make things right,
Right.
no matter how wrong or right the other person is.
If you were even a little bit wrong, you say that you're wrong.
When I say I'm sorry and that person says, "Oh, it's all right." No, it's not. Because if it was all right, we wouldn't be here. And whether we should or should not be here is not the question. What we need to understand is that we are here, and it's something that I did, and I want to let you know that no matter how you feel about it, no matter what you think you should feel about it, I recognize that I've caused you a wound, and for that, I'm sorry. And moving forward, I want to make sure that you know you have a safe place here, and I will never pick at you, play with you, or do anything that would cause that kind of thing to happen again.
Right.
And so when I said that to the person, it, she, the person immediately was kind of taken back because what happens is people who are wounded, and when you find a place where it's easy to wound somebody, even if it's not intentional, when that place is exposed, that means there has been a lot of wounding. There has been a lot of hurt, a lot of things that have never been dealt with, and that person has been oftentimes abused or gaslit or
Mishandled.
mishandled so much that they're like oftentimes victims of crimes or victims of different situations will say, "Well, I probably shouldn't have done this. I probably should." You know what I mean? Like there's
Look
this
at the reasons for why bad things happen to them.
right. There's this switch that they say, "Well, maybe if I should, maybe I shouldn't have been so, this or that." And I have to, we have to be aware, and we have to be in the moment enough with them and show them the love and this is something I just learned, and because of this situation, I'm talking about like yesterday, I was in the wrong, and I had to let that person know there's no excuse, there's no minimizing it, there's nothing. I realized that I was wrong, and I'm sorry, and I will never do that to you again. And I apologize for taking for granted the fact that I thought I just know you when I haven't sat and spent time with you in a long time.
Right.
And that surface level knowing somebody does not give you the right, or give me the right. Let me say it like that. It doesn't give me the right to think that I can just address you or say whatever in however,
Like your buddies.
like we're BFF, right? And because we're not besties.
Excuse me.
And hopefully there'll be an opportunity to become closer there, because now I've made my life and myself open by saying, hey, I want you to be safe around me, and I never ever ever want to make you feel involuntarily vulnerable or exposed or angry or frustrated or saddened by anything I have to say. I want you to feel encouraged, I want you to feel loved, and I want you to feel protected, and I want you to feel empowered by the things that I say, even in the jokes that I tell, even in the banter that we have. I don't want nothing other than empowerment, encouragement, love, and good things to come to your spirit. And so, again, the importance of allowing somebody to be wrong doesn't mean that you have to prove to them why they shouldn't feel that way. Because the old me would have been like, bro, I don't even know why you feeling that way, because it was just a joke. Why can't you just take a joke?
Right.
It was just a joke. I hear you talking to people like such and such and such. You know what I'm saying? Not you, but
No, yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
I hear you saying this and this and this to people, but now with this, like, those are the kind of justifications that people really throw at people. And instead of even coming close to healing the wound, it throws salt in it.
Mm.
So it's worse. It stings, and it's actually no, because salt actually heals even though it stings. But it
Right.
throws dirt in it, and it causes infection,
Right.
and it will cause offense. Hurt grows into offense, and that's what I was wanting to kill and nip at the bud, was the fact that I didn't want this person to become offended to
Right.
the point where
They don't even come back to church.
I affect their relationship with the people who are trying to speak into their lives.
Right. Man, that's big.
So, yeah, I think we've covered
A lot of ground.
a lot of ground tonight.
Took a long time to get to this point.
It did, but
We had a lot of trouble
you know,
today, but
hey, look, as
we
someone
made
who's
it here.
41 years old, I am 100% not where I want to be fully in being able to facilitate the types of relationships that I crave, because I'm just not learning what types of relationships are really most beneficial.
Right. The most valuable relationships are not always the most comfortable.
They're not. And one thing I appreciate about, let me just tag this on, about the person that I had this situation with, is that they were willing to just allow me to apologize
Right.
and make sure that they understood you're not responsible for apologizing back.
Right.
You're not responsible for anything other than
Accepting.
how you deal with this between you and God. And thankfully, immediately we were able to exchange hugs. We were able to exchange love in the form of forgiveness,
Right.
and then having a good time together genuinely.
Right.
So,
But what if somebody, I know we're trying to wrap up here, but what if somebody doesn't accept your apology? Do you just let them go? Or do you try and convince them how sorry you are?
nope, nope. Because when you speak from the heart, and this is something I learned from Pastor Ryan, he said, I don't chase people that choose to leave that way. Because if you know me, you know my heart and my intent. And because if you have relationship with me, you know my heart, my intent, and my purpose is always to do good by you
Right.
with the help of God. And if I messed up because I'm a person and I lay it out there, hey, look, I messed up and I'm so sorry. If that's not good enough for you, that will always be there for you to take, because I've admitted in my fallacy and my wrongness,
Right.
and I pray that my humility in coming to you and say, or if you call me on it and I say, whoa, my bad, completely. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. My bad. I'm so sorry. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. What they do with that is between them and God,
Right.
because that's what the word says.
Right. Because then they're still choosing to be offended, and that's not your fault. But that's not your problem.
Jesus
after
said it
you-
himself.
after you apologize.
Jesus said himself, if you don't forgive people, my Father in heaven will not forgive you.
Right.
The Lord is my shepherd. He leads you in those places, right?
Mhm.
This is also the one that says, my Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You give us this day our daily bread.
Give us
Forgive us of our debts
as we forgive those.
as we forgive those who have debt or sinned against us.
Right. He
Or is it forgives our
he
trespasses?
trespasses,
Sorry,
debts,
it's
sin.
trespasses. We forgive, and there's different the different translations.
Right.
Like,
But the point is that
and then he
he
says,
forgives
"You
us
lead
as
us
we
not
forgive them.
into you lead us not into temptation, and you deliver us from evil. For that is the power of the glory forever." And he said, "This is the prayer. This is how you pray." He said, "But just know, you're asking for forgiveness in there. If you're not willing to forgive, you can't be forgiven."
That's a whole other can of worms.
It's a whole nother can of worms. But at that point, if somebody doesn't want to just forgive you, then that's where compassion comes in.
Mm.
And that's where intercession and intercessory prayer comes in, because you say,
Right.
Father, I don't know what's causing them to hurt. I don't know what's causing them to feel this way. I don't even know what I did truly. But whatever is this situation here, and you begin to pray for them and saying, Father, help them to forgive and to release. Father, let your love and your compassion come on their hearts so that they can be softened and that you can deal with them, and your spirit of conviction can help point them in the direction that they need to that they can come into alignment to release and forgive. And that's all you can do. It's been a long podcast.
This is long.
It was good though. I feel like it, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. We didn't feel like doing this tonight
It's
because
almost midnight.
it is almost midnight. But I'm glad we did, because
It's good.
she encouraged me to do it. I was frustrated. I was aggravated at some things, but I love you, babe.
I love you. I'm glad we sat down because now we can go to bed in a good mood.
That's right. Thank y'all for watching.
Yes.
Remember, Facebook, the Love Don't Lie podcast
And
page, and the YouTube page.
share it with everyone.
Yes, please. Things are going to get better. Hopefully the content is getting better, and
Yeah, I think we're getting better at conversation.
I think we are. It's just weird talking on camera. So God bless you. Thanks a lot, and we look forward to the next episode. So I'm gonna be looking to get this thing on Spotify before too long, and be looking out for that. So that's pretty exciting too. So peace. Y'all have a good one.